Okay, back to Zero Escape, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors. We are picking up having just left the laboratory. So, let me just audio levels here for a second. Cool. So I don't hear my own echo. Alright, we're moving on. In fact, let's see where we are. No, wrong. Yes, we're kind of up here. We got, looks like a decision coming up after 2 scenes.
Whew, thank God we got out of there.
Yeah, finally.
Oh, yeah.
All 3 collapsed against the wall, breathing heavily. Junpei's heart was pounding in his chest, and his whole body felt weak. He inhaled gulps of clear air, and with each one, he could feel his body begin to calm down.
All right, let's go.
Okay.
They nodded to each other and started off down the hallway. Before long, they found a few new doors, but all of them were locked.
Damn, none of these open. They're all locked.
How about that one?
The final door sat in the corner of the hallway.
Let's hope this is the door with the prize.
Junpei grabbed the door handle and was about to pull it when a voice cried out behind him. It was neither Clover nor Lotus, but he recognized it. There was no doubt the voice belonged to.
Junpei!
Huh?
He spun around. There at the other end of the hall, Junpei saw human figures running toward him. 3 of them.
June? Santa! 7!
They stopped short in front of Junpei and his companions, gasping for air.
Hey, what are you guys doing here? What? But we didn't...
Before he could finish, Clover
Hey
spoke.
guys! Could you come take a look at this?
She was standing near the end of the small hallway that branched off to the right. The rest of them ran over to her, curious what she'd found.
Hey, on the wall. A map of the ship's interior?
It says C deck.
So it's the map for this floor then?
Mm-hmm.
Door 7 and... Door 8. Yep, they both eventually end up at this hallway.
Interesting. Interesting. In fact,
Yeah, isn't that what I said? We aren't going to be split up permanently till we find door 9. We might get separated for a little while, but we'll see each other again. Otherwise, we won't be able to open door 9.
that is
That's how
true.
the Nonary game works.
Junpei looked at the map of the ship's interior again.
Wait a sec. This leads to...
As he looked more closely, his surprise and excitement gave way to worry.
Oh,
You've got to be kidding me.
One by one, the others saw what he'd seen.
We may as well go.
yeah.
As one, they all moved back toward the door Junpei had only a moment ago been ready to open.
Almost forgot. We should keep this.
He pulled the map of the ship's interior off the wall, put it in his pocket, and followed the others. 6 of them stood in front of the door, arrayed in a semicircle. Santa stepped forward. He took hold of the door and spoke without looking back at the other 5.
Ready? I'm gonna open it.
Alright, you do you. They nodded their silent assent. With a deep breath, Santa threw open the door. They poured through the doorway and into the room. Even without looking around, each one of them knew where they were.
I knew it.
They were just where the map had said they would be.
Back. In the hospital room.
Dot 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 dot.
I see. I believe I understand what you're saying. The 6 of you split into 2 teams and went through doors 7 and 8. You solved the puzzles in the operating room and the laboratory. And then met one another in the hallway after opening your respective locked doors.
Looked like anyone might after only just waking up, but it seemed that his brain was working as well as ever. He managed to grasp, summarize, and understand each team's report.
At any rate, I feel a bit silly for my little show of altruism. I know I said I was sure you'd come back for me. I didn't think it would happen so soon, though.
He shook his head with a rueful smile.
Well, we saw each other again and we ain't dead. I say that's good enough.
7 smiled.
Anyway, I say we get out of this creepy old place. We found the key we need.
The key?
Ain't that what I just said? I'm talking about the Jupiter key. We found it in the operating room. Here.
7 tossed something small and metallic toward Junpei.
Nice catch.
Jeez.
He caught it and found that the object was a key.
I see. So this is Jupiter.
On it, someone engraved a symbol very similar to a 4. He looked over at June, who nodded back. It had to be the Jupiter symbol.
I'm gonna let you hold on to that, alright?
Yeah, on it.
Why me?
Well, I've got something for you too. Here, it's the Saturn key card. We found it in the kitchen. I might lose it. It's probably better if you hold on to it. That way it won't be my fault if it gets lost.
Yeah, on it.
Yeah, on it. That's a good response. I like that. It's probably my favorite line from Junpei so far. And that she pressed it into Junpei's hand. Felt slightly less than honored.
So how many unused keys do we have now?
There's the Earth key we found in the laboratory. The Jupiter key you just gave me. And the Saturn key card from Lotus. I'll keep them safe.
I'm thinking Junpei, Ace, and 7 probably have the most pockets.
The Jupiter key is supposed to be for the door at the end of that long straight hallway, right?
Yeah. If the map's right, then it connects to the central staircase. Then, next to the stairs...
Wait!
They were the first words anyone had heard out of Clover in quite some time. Her face suggested they weren't going to be very happy
What
words.
about door 3?
Look, you saw the map, right? It's the same as 7 and 8. Just lead us back to the big hospital room. There's no point to seeing what's on the other side of that door.
There is a point. At least there is for me.
There were tears in her eyes, but she glared at 7 as hard as she could, just the same. She looked very much like a frightened puppy. There wasn't a man alive who could have resisted those eyes. Don't phrase it like that. I almost said something there. I'm gonna walk back from that. Let's carry on. 7 looked everywhere in the room except at Clover, and muttered and coughed apologies under his breath.
Yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. Snake might be on the other side of door 3.
Clover nodded once. The person next to speak was Ace.
Very well. I'll be coming with you then.
So 4 plus 1. So 3 of you plus Santa.
I've had a nice long rest. I think it's time I was up and about again. So 7, you'll help me, won't you?
Huh? Me?
Wait, Ace and 7 is 8. Plus Clover's 4 is 12. Yeah, that will work. Junpei did the calculations quickly in his head. Oh, I got it wrong. 4 plus 1 plus 7 equals 12. 1 plus 2 equals 3. It looked like 7 was doing them too. I lost you.
Well, I guess that's how it's gotta be. So I'm going with you, huh?
Yes, you are.
Alright, let's get moving.
So it was decided that Clover, Ace, and 7 would discover what lay beyond door 3.
Okay, we're heading out.
Be careful.
Whoa. Didn't think I'd be hearing that from you, Lotus.
Don't let it go to your head. I'd be in trouble if the 3 of you bought it. The rest of us can't open the 9 door.
Ah, the truth comes out.
7 nodded as if this answer made much more sense and pulled the lever on the red.
We're off.
Door opened and Ace, Clover, and 7 jumped through it. Jumped? Really? 6, 7, 8, 9. For exactly 9 seconds, the doors closed noisily.
Alright, we should get moving too.
Huh?
Get moving.
Where are we going?
Everyone except Lotus seemed rather
Well, it
confused.
would be a waste of time to just sit around, wouldn't it? Let me explain.
Oh, I get it. We're gonna see if we can get anywhere interesting with the Jupiter key.
Yes. If we're lucky, we might find Snake.
At the end of the hallway, lined by individual hospital rooms.
Here's the Jupiter symbol on the keyhole.
Alright, Junpei, open it if you please.
Yeah.
Junpei pulled the Jupiter key out of his pocket and slid into the keyhole. He twisted. With a nice, sharp click, he felt the door unlock. Junpei sucked in a breath, held it, and opened the doors as quietly as he could. Inside was exactly what he expected to see from the map of the ship's interior. They're in a tremendous hall, almost like a ballroom, with a massive central staircase.
Great, back to the beginning. You sure this is a good idea?
What do you mean?
Well, we already searched every inch of this room, didn't we? I'm asking you if there's any reason we came back here.
Of course there's a reason. Man, sometimes I can't tell if you're smart or just lucky.
Huh?
This.
Junpei pulled two of the things out of his pocket.
The Saturn key card. And the Earth key? I'm lost.
Really? Are you that dense, Santa? Santa cocked his head to one side like an inquisitive bird and looked at him. After several long moments, during which it became apparent that Santa had no idea what the cards meant, June took pity on him.
Don't you remember, Santa? On C deck, where we are now, there was a big elevator behind the stairs, remember? And next to the elevator, there was a card reader with the Saturn symbol on it. And on A deck, on the door to the left, there was a keyhole with the Earth symbol on it, I think. So the two keys that Junpei has?
Should let us use the elevator and the door on A deck. Huh.
Yes, that's right.
June smiled, pleased with herself. So did Santa.
Alright, I got it. Let's get started then. What do you say we split into two teams? Lotus and I will search the Earth one, so you two can search Saturn, alright?
Sounds good. Then you guys should take this key.
Junpei handed the Earth key to Santa. They decided that their initial search should be brief.
We have no idea what's on the other side of these, so don't go too far. Just search for 10 minutes and come back.
And decided the two teams split up. Splitted up? I think either's correct, actually. Junpei and June headed
There's
for
a
the
card
others.
reader next to the left elevator.
Then let's try out the Saturn key card.
The light on the upper left corner blinked to
Great.
life.
It looks like it's working now.
All right. Now, how do I call the elevator?
There's a single button on the right of the elevator door,
Oh.
if that would be it.
It only has the upside down triangle on it.
I guess there's no up button. Well, we may as well try pushing this one.
Door slid shut, and they heard the grinding of the motor as the elevator car moved down. Down from where? There's no up button.
It opened. Look, Junpei.
June's voice was excited, but Junpei could hear a tinge of anxiety.
Sweet! It opened! Let's get going.
He grinned at June and stepped toward the door. As he was about to set foot in it, he felt a hand on his arm.
Wait.
What?
I'm not really, I just, oh gosh.
Junpei was at something of a loss. What could she possibly be so frightened of? June was probably afraid of... They could only go down. now is not the time to be bashful about the void. Afraid because the only elevator button pointed down. And then of course the elevator couldn't go any higher than the floor they were on. As he thought about it, Junpei realized he hadn't seen elevators on the A or B decks near the central staircase, all of which meant that the elevator could only convey them to the lower decks. Come to think of it.
The lower floor, D deck, is completely underwater. An elevator heading to a submerged floor. That is pretty scary. Hey, wait a minute. This elevator came up from somewhere under us, right?
No, it came down.
Well, yes, I guess it did. It didn't open right away after you pressed the button. There was a motor noise like it was moving, and then it opened.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
So, take a look inside.
Junpei jerked his head toward the interior of the elevator.
It's not wet at all, is it? The walls and even the floor are totally dry.
Oh, you're right. They are.
She looked around the elevator, slightly embarrassed.
Well, let's test it.
Test it.
Yeah, watch this. Now, I'll just put one foot inside the elevator and look over at the buttons. Oh, there's only two. E and C. All right, I'll push E.
He pushed the E button and jumped out of the elevator. The door slid shut, and they heard the grinding of the motor as the elevator car moved down.
I think I can hear it opening on E deck.
Okay, that's done. Now I'll just press the button again.
Months later, the elevator returned. This is a good test, by the way. They are actually doing something pretty smart.
Yep, not a single drop of water to be seen. See?
Junpei couldn't resist puffing out his chest a little bit. June, however, still looked confused.
What does that mean? How can E deck be safe if the D deck is full of water?
Well, here's what I think. The elevator shaft and E deck must be watertight and separated from wherever the ship's been punctured. Here, let me show you.
Pulled out his notebook and pen and sketched out a rough illustration.
I see. So is that why the ship hasn't sunk? The shape of the inside keeps it all from filling with water?
Yeah, I think that's what's going on.
Junpei continued talking as he closed the notebook and slipped it back into his pocket.
So I'm gonna go down and check it out. You stay here, alright?
Ooh, okay.
But...
Come on, just do it, alright?
He gave June's shoulder a reassuring squeeze and then hopped into the elevator. He pushed the E button and the door began to close. June looked worried, her eyes darting back and forth as if she were trying to make a decision when suddenly...
I'm coming with you!
Okay. Last possible moment, June dashed forward and turning sideways just in time to slip through the gap between the closing doors.
Wait!
Junpei jammed his finger against the open button, but it was too late.
Oh, crap, it closed!
The door had shut, and he and June were in the elevator and it was heading down to E deck. He was so surprised by June that he didn't even have time to think about what awaited him on the E
I
deck.
can't just let you go alone, you know.
Ah, jeez.
Yes. The elevator stopped and the door slid open. They tentatively stepped out and looked around.
It looks normal.
No fishing going about their fishy business, or jellyfish floating lazily through the water. There was, however, a blowfish, or at least something that looked very much like one. June's cheeks were puffed out, her mouth a tiny, intense frown. Oh.
Oh, knock it off. It's just like I thought. This part hasn't flooded. Come on, just look around. There's no water here.
June looked around nervously, then exhaled.
You're right. It's not flooded at all.
See?
But there's a whole lot of water.
Yeah, right on top of us.
What's gonna happen if the ceiling breaks?
Junpei thought about that for a moment.
Probably die.
Oh no. Don't be so casual about something like that.
At any rate, we should probably go back as soon as we can, once we're done looking around down here. Lotus and Santa might already be back.
Okay, good idea.
Now then.
Junpei glanced around the room they'd found themselves in. First thing he noticed was a set of thick iron bars. They ran the length of the room, separating the left elevator from the right one. Oh no.
iron bars. Well, we can't go over there.
Right.
Then maybe...
In the corner of the room that housed the elevators, Junpei found an opening. He walked up to it and stuck his head around the corner.
It looks like there's a long straight hallway down this way.
Something's written on the door at the end. Wait, is that...
Let's check.
Junpei and June set off down the hallway at a brisk clip, somewhere between a run and a jog. Before long, they found themselves in front of a door. On it was a number written in bright red paint.
I knew it!
6.
This is a numbered door.
Indeed, there was a red bolted to the wall next to the door.
But we can't do anything with only the two of us.
We better head back and let everyone know.
Yes.
Junpei and June turned, headed back to the sea
Wait,
deck.
what's this?
On the way back, Junpei noticed a map on the wall.
Is this the map for E-Deck? I should take it with me.
I guess we'll look at it later.
Huh, so you guys found door 1.
They met back up with Santa and Lotus, who had explained what they'd found. Apparently there was another numbered door on A deck, just like the one on E deck beyond the door at the Earth key opened. According to Santa and Lotus, there was a 1 on the door.
So now we've located 2 new doors. The 6 door and the 1 door.
So we've seen the 4, the 5, the 3, the 7, the 8, the 1, and the 6. 7. We haven't seen the 2 door. Nor the 9 door.
You know, it is interesting that E-Deck wasn't flooded.
This was quiet for a moment, lost in
Well,
thought.
we don't really know if all of E-Deck is safe. We only checked the area around the elevator.
Even so, it's still very interesting.
You said the 6th door was there, right?
Yes.
And that means Zero planned all this out, even the sinking. That would have meant some pretty serious remodeling of the ship's interior.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it.
It is.
Yeah. I wonder how long it took. I can't even imagine how much it must have cost.
It would have been a ton, that's for sure.
Well, that does go along with what Ace was saying. The most reasonable explanation would be that this was done by some organization with access to a whole lot of cash.
Fair
Yes,
point.
It does make sense.
That thought made them all go quiet for a moment. Dot dot dot. June bit her lip while Lotus sighed softly to herself, and Santa cracked a stiff neck and stared off into the distance at nothing.
Yeah?
I don't think it's a very good idea to stay here.
June looked up at Junpei with large, pleading
Yeah,
eyes.
you're right. Ace and his team might be back already.
Well, Junpei and I should be able to open door 1.
Junpei, and I should be able to.
Huh? You guys leaving me behind?
8 plus 6 plus 5 equals 19. 9 and 1 equals 10. 1 and 0 equals 1.
Just kidding. All right, let's go.
Those words were all the impetus they needed. Back to the large hospital room they went. Resident Evil, sorry. When they stepped inside, a tremendous voice echoed across there.
Hey! Where the hell did you guys go?
It was 7.
7?
Ace. Clover. Ace was right behind him and Clover was behind Ace, although she seemed to be hanging back.
What's wrong?
It looked as though there was something strange about them. 7 had the look of a man who'd seen a ghost. Ace was just as pale, and Clover looked as though she was only moments from passing out entirely. For a long moment, they simply stood there, looking at one another. Junpei looked around nervously, waiting for someone else to speak. No one did. He looked at 7.
What happened?
What the hell kind of question is that?
7 was trying very hard to be angry, but something had shaken him hard. His shoulders were trembling and his voice was strained.
Snake is...
7 couldn't finish. He looked away, his face twisted, but Junpei wasn't sure what. Instead, Ace spoke. He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and spoke.
Snake is dead.
Snake! Wait, no, sorry, wrong again.
He died, just as the 9th man did.
It was as if all the air had suddenly been sucked out of the room. Junpei felt his heartbeat quicken and he realized he was having trouble breathing. He could feel cold sweat beading on his forehead and neck. Jane, Santa, and Lotus looked the way he felt. All three were frozen in place, their faces white.
God, that's not true, is it?
We should make sure.
Yeah, right. We should.
They nodded to one another and headed for the number 3 door.
Wait, not that way.
What? What?
They stopped short and turned to look at 7. He pointed at the door with no number.
I stuck a screwdriver in there to keep the door from closing. It's not locked, so you can go in that way.
Where is,
The shower room. The left
On
side.
the left side of the hallway.
I put a broom in there too to keep the door.
That means we can get in without going through the numbered door, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Then let's go.
New destination clear. Junpei and his companions headed for the door with no number. Once in the hall, it was easy to spot the metal door on the
This
left
wasn't
wall.
open when we passed here before.
But now, just as 7 had said, there was a broom stuck between the door and the frame, keeping it open.
Let's keep going.
They looked at it for a moment, then stepped inside.
Oh, it smells horrible.
Lotus wrinkled her nose and covered her mouth in disgust. Even Santa pinched his nose shut.
Ugh, yeah, this is pretty awful. I feel like I'm gonna puke.
Just as bad as they said, perhaps worse. A hideous smell filled the air so thick they could almost taste it. It was sour and smelled of fish, feces, and burnt meat. It worked its way through Junpei's nose and down his throat to pound against the entrance to his stomach. Put his hand over his mouth and struggled to keep what little was in his stomach where it belonged.
Where is he? Where's Snake?
That's an interesting point. Like, how long ago did they eat, and would they have anything left in their stomachs? Are they incredibly hungry? Who knows? You didn't have to wonder where the body was.
There.
There was blood everywhere, a few arms of splatter reaching toward them as they walked through the door. All one had to do was follow the main radial arms to their source. The body itself was hidden behind a divider.
June, you should stay here.
But
Please, just do me a favor, okay? Alright?
He didn't give her any chance to say no. He put his hand on her shoulder as if to shove her into the ground like a tent pole, turned, and walked toward the end of the divider.
I'm going in.
It felt like an eternity for him to get there. Santa and Lotus followed, timid and nervous as a pair of children. Eventually they reached the divider. They looked at one another and nodded slowly. Junpei put his hand on the divider and peered around the corner. For a moment he forgot to breathe. He felt his heart collapse in his chest, like an empty cigarette carton, and time froze. He knew in that instant that he would take the image before him to the grave. See, that's all you need to show. You don't need to actually show the body. What was left of the body sat in a sea of blood. Chunks of flesh torn from the body sat in a blood like tiny islands in a great red sea. A vast ragged hole had been torn in the torso, and what remained of his intestines spilled out like fresh spaghetti. Okay. Smaller chunks of meat had splattered against the wall and become stuck there as they dried. Globules of yellowish fat had left trails like tiny slugs as gravity pulled them down the wall, even as they dried to it. Alright, I need to have a word with the writer of this game. 1 second. Alright.
Just like I said.
Said his voice was strained. Junpei suspected he was holding down some vomit of his own.
Just like the ninth man. The detonator in his bracelet set off the bomb in his gut.
It looked as though the explosion had been quite powerful.
Oh, the bone is coming out of his left arm.
It's definitely an open fracture.
His legs were both bent in odd and unnatural way, and his left arm had split open, exposing the painfully white bone of his ulna. His bracelet lay next to him. It seemed to have hit the wall hard enough to have shattered the display, which lay on the ground in pieces.
Oh, the face. It's horrible.
Yeah, you can't even tell who it is.
Half of his head had simply collapsed. The blood coating almost made it look like a raw pizza dough covered in tomato sauce. His clothes too were covered in blood. The burgundy tie, the white shirt, the jacket with the yellow piping, the gray slacks.
But the clothes are...
They're all familiar to Junpei.
Mistake about it. It's Snake.
Lotus's voice was unnaturally deep and strained, and Junpei heard it catch in her throat. The squeal of tortured metal made Junpei's teeth curl. It sounded like the noise a ghost would make. No matter how many times he heard it, he never got used to it. Every time, it put him on edge. It didn't help that there was a girl nearby who looked far more like a ghost than a living human should. It was Clover. She sat on the edge of the bed, her head drooping listlessly onto her chest. Her eyes were blank and stared across the room at nothing. Her breathing was slow and mechanical. Aside from the rise and fall of her chest, she did not move. Junpei felt as even a nudge might cause her to shatter into 1,000 pieces.
Snake was probably murdered. Chances are he was killed the same way the ninth man was.
Seven lowered his voice, likely in an effort to keep Clover from hearing what he had to say. There were 4 other people in the room with Junpei and Seven. Ace, Santa, June, and Lotus. Seven looked at each one of them in turn and continued.
It's pretty straightforward. Not that hard to figure out how they did it. First, the killers got Snake to authenticate on the red to open door 3. Then they shoved him into it, alone, and waited 9 seconds for the door to shut. Once that door shut, it was all over for Snake. But he didn't give up. He probably knew it wouldn't do him any good, but he probably ran into the shower room looking for the dead. It was a small chance, but it wasn't like he had anything to lose. Unfortunately, it didn't work. The detonator is only deactivated if everybody who authenticated when they went in uses the dead.
If he's the only one who went in.
Snake was the only one who went through the door. And then, 81 seconds after he was shoved in, that happened.
I see. So that's what you meant by killers, huh? You need at least 3 people to open one of the numbered doors, including Snake. It wouldn't open for Snake and a single killer.
Yeah, that means we're looking at multiple perps here.
Perps. Nice. So let's think about who could possibly get through the 3 door. Junpei crossed his arms and grunted.
Well, just in case, I want to make sure. Let's say you're right. When do you think Snake was killed?
When we all split up to look for the parts for the Reds, I think. Right after that was when we noticed he was gone.
And that means none of us have alibis. We were all off searching the rooms we'd been assigned, looking for those parts.
Yeah, that means anybody could be a killer.
Wait a minute. What are you talking about?
June seemed shocked.
How can you say that so casually? You're implying that one of us is a killer.
Well, not just one of us. If I'm right, then at least 2 of us are murderers.
Would we now?
Why don't you calm down a bit, Seven? What are you going to gain by being so suspicious? That's what Zero wants, you know?
Do you really need 3 people? I mean, do you need 3 people?
What Zero wants?
Exactly. This game was set up by Zero, wasn't it? Any game has a winner and loser. Whoever makes it through door 9 is a winner, and those who don't are the losers.
Aces of the zero sum school
Zero
of
is
thought.
trying to make us fight against one another for that victory.
Then you're saying that Zero is trying to split us up by making us fight each other?
Yes. That is why we can't let ourselves fall prey to suspicion. We have to trust one another and form a strong bond of friendship. Otherwise, we'll end up ensnared by Zero's manipulations.
Then does that mean that the person who killed Snake...
Yes. Almost certainly Zero himself. If there's anyone we should doubt, it should be Zero. He masterminded this game and kidnapped all of us. Doesn't it seem reasonable that he would have killed Snake as well?
Good question.
Junpei hadn't really considered
If
that.
Zero killed Snake, then Zero is on the ship with us.
Junpei. Was Zero still on the ship with them? Man, I don't know. He wasn't sure.
Something's still strange.
What was that?
Well, I'm just wondering about one thing.
And what's that?
How can you be so sure that Zero's on this ship?
His eyebrows shot up.
Really, Junpei? I confess I'm a little disappointed. Usually you're rather sharp. Isn't it obvious?
Wait, it is?
This ship.
Huh?
Zero said, "this ship," several times when he addressed us. If he weren't here, he wouldn't say "this ship," would he?
I don't know about that.
He'd be saying something like, "that ship," or "the ship."
Oh, yeah, I guess that makes sense.
No, it really does not. This exclamation made perfect sense. No, it does not. Junpei felt a little foolish that he hadn't seen it himself. Still, he was left with a question, and it was one of no small
If
importance.
Zero's on the ship, where is he?
Logic would say the bridge, I guess. Suddenly everyone went quiet. The silence was cold and clammy, and Junpei could feel it crawling across his back and around his throat. Again, he heard the ghosting moaning at noise. Moments later, a person who looked more ghost than human appeared. Clover. It was Clover. She looked at the floor as she spoke, and her voice was cold monotone.
I think Zero is one of us.
Dun dun dun. Excuse me for the burp. Got some more burps in there. Every human body in the room froze. The only sound was the muffled rustling of breath. As darted from face to face, one of those faces was the face of their jailer. But who? Was he one of them? Well, that's possible.
Well, that's possible.
Huh?
Like Clover said, Zero might be one of us.
What are you saying, Junpei? Didn't you hear what Ace said?
Exactly. I said we shouldn't suspect one another for no reason.
No reason. I've got a great reason.
To you, Junpei. I'm all ears.
And what's that?
The bracelets. Why are the bombs in our bodies connected to the bracelets? You're all thinking Zero's hiding somewhere watching us, right? If he's doing that, then he could just detonate the bombs by remote control if someone did something they weren't supposed to. It would be a lot more precise and a lot easier. But if that's the case, then why is the bomb set off by the detonator in the bracelet?
You got a point.
You do,
I'm
Junpei.
not done. Try applying the same ideas to the Nonary game. All of the puzzles here run all by themselves. In other words, Zero doesn't have to be controlling them for the game to move forward. Why's that? Why would Zero bother to do something like that?
Junpei let the question hang in the air and looked at the others. It was Santa
So
who
let's
answered.
say you and Clover are right. Zero's one of us. If that's the case, then it'd be really hard for him to keep track of all of us or control anything remotely. That's why all the puzzles run by themselves. That's what you're getting at, right?
Sounds right to me. Hold on.
Yeah.
Junpei nodded.
When we were talking earlier, you said any one of us could be Snake's killer, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Alright then. I've got a question for you, Ace. You said something like Zero must be the one who killed Snake, right?
Yes, something like that. I can't think of any other explanation.
So what do we get if we combine those? They fit together pretty well, I think. Something like this. Whoever killed Snake is Zero. Hence, Zero is one of us. Seven and Ace's theories aren't mutually exclusive. They actually complement each other pretty well. At least they do if Zero is one of us.
No one spoke. Their faces were grim, but Junpei wasn't sure if they believed him or not. Finally, Lotus spoke up.
What were his motives?
One second, let me see where we're at in the flow of things. Okay, we're still good.
His motives.
Yes, isn't that pretty important? Why would Zero want to hide as one of us?
Oh, well, that's because
Junpei choked. He hadn't thought of that, and he had to be honest with himself. He had no idea.
I don't know.
Lotus sighed.
So much for making a persuasive argument, Junpei.
In other words, you only had circumstantial evidence.
I don't really think that's enough to go on, you know?
Ah,
Junpei was painfully aware of their eyes on him and their disapproval. He tried to find something else, anything else to look at. Then, in that horrible silence, 2, 3, 4. No, it's 3.
It's 3 in the morning.
That means we have 3 hours left.
Then we need to move now. Seven, Clover, Junpei, I know how you feel, but you do understand that right now it's important we trust one another, don't you?
you're right, but
Junpei couldn't bring himself to respond. He swallowed the words he wanted to say inside. Seven and Clover remained silent, similarly silent. Their eyes were looking at something somewhere else, very
We
far
must
away.
go. We have very little time left.
Ace's words put their feet to moving. They all knew where they were
our
going.
next destination is Mercury.
Mercury?
Or maybe you and June should check it out first and then report back to us.
All right, let's go, June.
Right. Here it is.
It sat bolted to the wall near the stairs and led to the casino and the kitchen. Led to the casino and the kitchen between the two elevators. Alright, we're here. Go ahead and save. No. No. Trying to remember what buttons do what. Yeah, I want to save that. Why not?
The Mercury card reader.
We're using the card 7 gave us, right?
Wait, what? Did something glitch?
Yeah,
I found it when we were checking out the shower room.
I think Seven said something like that. Anyway, let's see what happens.
Is my memory just failing me? Did we just skip over a scene that I completely forgot?
I guess the elevator works now.
Junpei, I know it's only the two of us, but let's do our best.
What's with you all of a sudden?
Well, I'm happy we were put together.
I am totally confused.
You know it's just for searching E-Deck, right?
Even so, I'm glad I'm with you.
Oh, first we need to find out if the elevator comes up full of water.
Just like we did before.
Man, I am confused. I feel like we completely skipped a
There it
scene.
is.
Actually, hold on, I'm gonna look this up, see if something is wonky with the game. And it seems like the most common issues are no sound issue, which, I mean, we're definitely not having. Discussion, should I play 999 on the PC or the DS? No spoilers. Explaining why it makes great use of the DS hardware is kind of a spoiler. Alright, let's carry on.
I knew it. It's not wet at all.
Let's go.
Yes.
Once it had been checked for water, Junpei and June stepped into the elevator.
Look! Nearly all of the buttons are destroyed.
Yeah, only the seat and bottom button can be pushed.
We're on C deck right now, so the only one we can choose is bottom.
Yeah. Well, let's try it out.
Junpei hit the bottom button. The door slid closed. Slowly they began to move downward.
Oh, so this is the bottom deck.
They stepped off and saw that the hallway to their right ended somewhere between 20 and 25 feet from them. The hallway in front of them was a dead end, but not a regular dead end.
Over there.
This
Oh, there's
is
the
a
two door.
numbered door.
This is the 8th one we found. There were 2 numbered doors on B deck near the central staircase.
5 and 4.
Doors 4 and 5. 3 more in the large hospital room. Doors 3, 7, and 8.
And the door we found on E deck, and the door Lotus and Santa found on A deck. It was a 6 on the door on E deck, and
That means...
do you think the next door we find?
Yeah, I think so. The next one's gonna be door 9.
Despite himself, Junpei felt excited. There was something about that excitement that frightened him as well.
Finally!
Yeah,
You don't look very happy about it, though.
it's not that. I just hope nothing goes wrong.
Yeah, I really don't.
We should keep our fingers crossed.
Let's head back.
Okay.
It is best to put it from his mind and head back to the C deck with June.
1, 2, 3, 4. All right, 7 pieces.
Pieces of paper they had folded up lay on the ground next to Junpei's legs. Everyone had written on paper pulled from Junpei's notebook in an effort to pull together a blind vote.
Just double checking, but everyone wrote their code name and a door number they want, right?
Yes, just like you told us earlier.
Now, they just seem to be jumping into scenes en medias res. It's weird.
Can't believe we're voting here.
Why had they decided to vote that way?
We need to make the whole thing fair. Blah-de-blah. This is a complicated plan, you know. Hurry it up, Mr. I have a brilliant idea.
They decided it wasn't fair to simply ask everyone at once. That would allow people to force others to go through certain doors.
Yeah, quiet in the peanut gallery.
And he had a plan. It wasn't a plan he wanted anyone catching wind of, so ever so he did his best to act calm as he began to open and read the pieces of paper.
Let's open these up. The first one says, Ace requests door 1.
Yes, I do. Would you like me to explain why?
No, we don't have time for that. Sorry. Let's keep going.
You open the second
Next
one.
to Santa. He wants door 6.
Yeah, that's what I wrote.
Junpei continued on with the third, fourth, and fifth pieces of paper.
Clover wants 1, Lotus wants 2, and 7 also wants 2.
Wait a minute. There is no way I'm going anywhere with the Elephant Man.
No, there'd be no point to the voting if we let people change their choices because of stuff like that.
But no.
Just give it up, Lotus. It's not like I want to hang out with some exhibitionist grandma.
Damn.
I am not an exhibitionist. I'm wearing clothes.
Barely.
So, last I checked, that's not a crime.
Maybe. But what about common decency? Nobody wants to have to look at a chick who looks like a half-naked raisin.
Oh, I'm gonna kill you!
Man. Okay. Lotus's hair flared out like the mane of an angry lion, and she roared with a voice that shook the walls. Oh, not good.
Let go! Let go of me! I'm killing him!
Some difficulty, Ace managed to restrain her.
Junpei, read the rest.
Right.
Junpei tore his eyes away and looked down at the sixth piece of paper. He opened it.
June wants door 6.
Yes, I don't really have a reason. I just felt like it.
All of the papers save Junpei's had been read. He did some quick calculations in his head.
So this was everyone's vote. Ace and Clover requested door 1.
This was the door on A deck near the central staircase.
7 and Lotus requested door 2.
This is the door on the bottom deck and could be reached by the elevator at the bottom of the ship. So 7 and Lotus. That'd be 15.
Santa and June requested door 6.
This is the door on E deck and could be reached by the elevator near the central staircase. Santa and June would be 3 plus 6 is 9.
Then the door I should choose is...
Took him less than a second to run the numbers. He opened the 7th piece of paper and spoke.
Okay, the last one is mine. I want to go through.
And we're gonna stop it here. I'm gonna stop this for a second and upload it and hopefully get started here again in a few moments. Y'all take care and I'll see you soon. Alright, bye.